right, welcome to talkSPORT End Zone. I'm Jay Lawrence. This is Brian Smith, and we're going to count down the top 5 Super Bowl contenders as per talkSPORT.com. You can read the whole article there, the top 10. We'll count down the top 5. Brian, we'll start with number 5, the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, that was a nice game last week between the Baltimore Ravens and the Washington Commanders. Lamar Jackson versus Jaden Daniels. And I was reminded that Lamar Jackson is an MVP candidate. Lamar Jackson is a multiple MVP winner. And this is a Ravens team that has started to find it now. They're up to 4-2 after a really poor start. I don't see anything about them right now that says this team could not be in the AFC Championship. This team is not an elite Super Bowl contender. And I think, we're all reminded that we all overreact after 1 or 2 weeks. It is a 17-game season. They play 18 weeks. You're playing into January. The Super Bowl's in February. All these things, we're still in mid-October. So the Baltimore Ravens are starting to find it. This is a John Harbaugh coach team with Derrick Henry. And every week, it does feel that if Lamar Jackson is on, this is a very, very dangerous team.
They're finding their rhythm,
and they're swagger. They're a big swagger team.
I like a bit of swagger, especially, the fact that they lost the first 2 games this season, and it's so easy to overreact and all of that. And in fact, it's quite interesting, actually, because they went one way and the Cincinnati Bengals almost went the other way. I know they won this weekend, but still. They're definitely going to be a contender. And they have been a contender for such a long time, but they just haven't been able to do it in the postseason. So I guess that, for them, is what it's all about. They are going to be confident that they can get to the playoffs. It's what happens when it gets to the playoffs. Yeah. Maybe that's why they're number 5, not further down there, further up the list, to be honest with you. Number 4 is the Minnesota Vikings, a team which was just on their bye, Brian. Is it a case of, they just not played this week, so it's out of sight, out of mind for you? Or do you think, they still should be talked about?
Yeah, and it would be easy for me to have them at number 2 or number 1. This is what happens in the NFL is that, you get penalized jokingly because you didn't play this week, which is absolutely silly, but that's what we all do because we're so focused on the Sunday, the Monday, the Thursday night. Minnesota was able to take a week off. They're able to get healthy. Sam Darnold's able to put it all in perspective and kind of get away and get back. And he had some potentially, some injury questions, so he's able to take a week off as well. Brian Flores is able to spend an extra week scheming up and planning and creating total confusion for the opponent. This is the Minnesota team. There's only 2 undefeated teams left in the NFL. One of them is Minnesota, and they continue to be one of the best stories in the NFL. But now it'll get interesting, right? Because Green Bay is good with Jordan Love. Caleb Williams, we were talking about him on the rundown. Caleb Williams is starting to look like with Jaden Daniels, the Rookie of the Year debate. Minnesota doesn't just have to make the playoffs and keep this going. They have to win their division. It's going to start getting very real for Minnesota the next few weeks.
I think it's really exciting, actually.
This is the best part.
If you're a fan of the NFC North, to be honest, or even just like an NFL fan, the NFC North is where it's at because it's the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears, and the Minnesota Vikings. All 4 of them could arguably be in there.
And they haven't even really started playing each other yet.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
When it really gets fun.
That's exciting. You are right. Okay, we'll move on to number 3. Let's head to Texas, shall we? The Houston Texans, CJ Stroud is he's just making football fun to watch, isn't he, Brian?
LeBron James is a huge fan. I'm watching the London game. London game's wrapping up at Tottenham with the Jaguars and the Bears. Texans are playing. I'm scrolling through Twitter, working for talkSPORT. LeBron James is tweeting about CJ Stroud, what a great ball he throws. So when LeBron James is blown away by CJ Stroud, that tells you how it's going for the Houston Texans. And I feel like I come on here every week, Jay, but they have injury issues. They have some question marks. It hasn't been a perfect season for them, and they're just racking up wins. And that's always the next step for a team, right? Because you're going to have setbacks. It's a league of adversity. How do you respond through that? How do you get through that? How good is your depth? And we've seen for the Texans that they've been able to lose their best wide receiver, lose your running back, Joe Mixon, for a few games, and keep it going. And even if they win and it's a little ugly, they're still racking up wins. And there's since all the preseason talk and the hype, and I think some people wondered, was it too much? Were they really ready? Were we getting too excited about the Houston Texans? They are 5-1. They are winning their division. They will be in the playoffs. They truly look like a contender. They have to keep that progression going.
And you mentioned Nico Collins there as well because he is out. Tank Dell stepping up, and I think it's actually going to be quite inspired when we look back on it. That trade for Stephon Diggs as well, who wants to be that that number one wide receiver, they look like they've got a really good offense now.
They have so many options at offense, and that's always the key. Kansas City does a great job of that, to where they can lose their star running back, their star wide receiver, and then other guys step up. Part of it, as you just mentioned, is Nico Collins will come back, but all of a sudden you're getting more reps, you're getting more primary targets for Stephon Diggs, for Tank Dell, for your tight end, all of these situations. This is a very, very dynamic, dangerous team, led by DeMeco Ryans, who's one of the best young coaches in the NFL. They are true Super Bowl contenders.
All right, we'll head out of the AFC South. Do you know what? Let's just go back to the NFC North again, shall we? We were only there a minute ago. The Detroit Lions at number 2. I think that the Detroit Lions, Brian, are, and you called them America's team a couple weeks ago. Whole of Dallas livid at you for saying that. But they are actually more than just America's team. I think they're just every NFL fan's team. It feels like we just want them to do well. And I think that's partly because it's Detroit, partly because of the history of the Lions, mostly to do with the coaching staff and to do with the players as well. And the enthusiasm, the fact that they are all in it together. They're very likable as a team, aren't they, Brian?
Well, you nailed that, and I will double down on it, because that was all before they lost Aiden Hutchinson, potentially for the season. He breaks his leg, and a gruesome injury, carted off the field. Now you have no choice. I don't think anyone was rooting against the Lions before, unless you're a Packers, Vikings, or Bears fan. Now the whole country will recognize in this team that if they can keep this going and stay at this level after you lose a player who was at that point, maybe with TJ Watt, the league candidate to be Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. If they can keep this going, what a testament to Detroit. And for me, it all comes back to Dan Campbell. I mean, he's such a dude. Like, he's a dude's dude. And often that doesn't really work for you long-term in the NFL. I mean, you can get some wins, it can look cool, it can play well on social media, but ultimately you have to be very level, right? Very even. Don't go the Nick Sirianni shaved head route. You can't go too dude either. Dan Campbell is doing all this while being the fourth down dude who he looks like he could get out there and still play. And Detroit feeds off that. Lions fans love it. The players love it. They absolutely destroyed, humiliated, embarrassed the Dallas Cowboys last weekend. Total tip of the cap to the Detroit Lions. America's team, the Detroit Lions.
Dan Campbell, I think, is the type of guy who I would love to go for a beer with.
Or 20 beers.
20 beers. But I also think that I recognize, I don't think I'm cool enough. I think that
he would think you're boring.
Yeah, he would. Also, thanks for that, Brian. We'll move to number 1 on the Super Bowl contenders list. I'm having words after this. The Kansas City Chiefs. We spoke about one team that were just on a bye with the Minnesota Vikings. Chiefs exactly the same. And yet they are still at number 1, Brian. Undefeated Kansas City Chiefs with a big test next week.
Yeah, let's see where these rankings stand after this upcoming week. This is where it starts to get fun in the NFL, right? Because you've had the initial wave. You had a team like Baltimore, we spoke about earlier, start poorly and get it going. San Francisco's dealt with all their injuries. Kansas City Chiefs have dealt with their injuries. Truly matchup of the week. Last week's matchup of the week was a letdown. Lions absolutely destroy the Cowboys. This is the Super Bowl rematch in Las Vegas, 9 months later. And Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, undefeated against Brock Purdy, Shanahan, and the 49ers. This is a really, really good game. But right now, as we speak, Chiefs are 5-0. Can't argue against them. It seemed like they found it their last game. This is the cream of the NFL. But I won't be surprised. I'm going to pick the Chiefs, but there won't be any part of me that's surprised the 49ers take that game.
Yeah, this time next week could be very interesting. Yes. I'll be interested to see where the Chiefs are on the rankings next week. All right, if you want to read the top 10, head over to talksport.com. We'll be back next week. And of course, remember, if you are on TalkSport End Zone right now on our YouTube, click that subscribe button.